are lots of reasons why people voted Brexit, but many of them are covered by one word: sovereignty. Brexiteers don't like to share it, from how many fish you can catch to who gets to live here and which court ultimately has the final say over British citizens. Many Brits get pretty cranky at the idea of having to follow rules and regulations set in Brussels, often by people they haven't voted for.
Almost 3 years after Britain voted to leave the European Union, the future of Brexit is less certain than ever. Theresa May has stepped down as Conservative Party leader after failing to get her withdrawal agreement through Parliament 3 times. Her resignation sparked a leadership contest within the party to find a new Prime Minister, and each contender has a different view on Brexit. May will retain her position as Prime Minister until the new leader is elected, and will then pass the unenviable task of steering the UK through Brexit to her successor.
Well, it's no secret that the EU regrets Brexit and sees it as a historic mistake. If a country as large and as powerful as the United Kingdom wants to leave a club in which it helps shape the single market and benefits from security cooperation, among many other things, what does that say about the club itself? Nothing good. And so from the start, the EU's approach has been damage control.
The British pound has slumped since the UK voted to leave the EU, and it could fall even further in the event of a hard or no-deal Brexit. Now, that may be some good news for tourists hoping for a cheap trip to the UK, and for some British businesses which are export-heavy. But it's bad news for many. The cost of living for Brits is rising as imports become more expensive, and it's a similar story for some British businesses which have to import raw materials. Plus, all the uncertainty over what the future trading relationship will be between the UK and the EU, well, that's forced some businesses to already hit their contingency plans. Big banks, for example, have already moved some operations from the UK to the EU.
The UK has been in decline for a century. Brexit is a milestone on that downward trajectory. Far from taking back control and turning the UK's fortunes around, it will leave the kingdom's citizens more isolated from allies, alliances and markets. Economic growth will be slower, intelligence sharing curtailed. But it's not as bleak as it sounds. The UK still has clout. It remains one of the 5 permanent members of the world's most powerful diplomatic body, the UN Security Council. Change won't be overnight, but the future as it comes will depend more on the billions of people beyond its borders than in the past.
Ebola survivors.
When Ebola latched onto Roger Wasakundi's family, denial came with it. My sister got it first, he says. We didn't want to believe it was Ebola. She stayed at home, and we buried her. Through the intimacy of family, the virus spread to his aunt, his mother, father, to him. It took days to persuade them to seek treatment at a center like this, where doctors told Roger that his father and aunt had died. So when they told me I had Ebola, he says, I thought I would die too. In medical terms, stopping the spread of Ebola should be simple. Identify patients quickly, isolate them, trace their contacts. But halting this outbreak has been anything but. The epicenter is anchored in a conflict zone, where authority often comes through violence, which breeds fear. This fear makes it difficult to stop the chain of transmission, says Sylvester Zongwe. What we needed was to break that fear. Zongwe, a health worker for French medical NGO Alima, says that in the city of Butembo, they wouldn't let outsiders in. When responders came to take the sick from their homes, he says, they didn't know who they were. They believed they would take them over there to die. That's what created resistance. Earlier this year, unknown assailants burnt down 2 treatment centers. All told, there have been more than 130 attacks on health outposts. Elima's solution: integrate an Ebola reception center in something people already knew, an existing clinic. So we're at a center where they receive patients who could have Ebola, but what's incredible about this, it's right inside a hospital. They negotiate with the community, they're hiring youth from the community, and this could be one of the answers. But it's still the only center of its kind. Many victims still die in their homes, refusing to seek treatment. And survivors return to a fearful community. Many people don't believe Ebola even exists, says Roger. If people can accept this crisis, then we can end it. David Mackenzie, CNN, Butembo, DRC.